Well, we'll start off with two lots of good news today. Tommy Robinson's been released on bail. We don't know the bail conditions yet. But it was all huff and puff anyway. Just to get back to Saturday's march, 30,000 people plus turned up. And as I said yesterday, Lilani Dowding felt safe enough to travel home on her own, to travel there on her own and just meet up with friends when she got there. There was a busload of pensioners from Hull. They managed to travel. They didn't have any problems. Everyone had a good day. The shamefulness of the way the Daily Mail reported the march, saying that far-right demonstrators gathered and there were multiple arrests, it made it sound as though it was violent. There wasn't even any litter. You see, this is why you can't trust the media. And what Tommy was trying to do yesterday, apart from the feel-good factor, I thought the Baptist singers were absolutely phenomenal. It was heartwarming. It made me well up a bit, actually. So the good news is he's been released. He knew he would get, he knew the possibility of getting arrested was high, and he did it anyway. So no matter what you think about Tommy Robinson, two things I really think we should admire in him is courage, and courage with a smile on your face. You very seldom see Tommy down and distressed. You see him worked up sometimes, but you don't see him down and distressed, apart from that time when he got arrested and he had to go into solitary confinement for his own safety, and they were putting faeces in his food when he was in jail. That was a dreadful, dreadful time, all trumped up again. But the trouble is, where society goes wrong, any society wants to feel safe. If people don't feel safe, they get agitated. So one of the ways we try to keep people safe is through the police force. It used to be a body of people that you would turn to in a crisis, a burglary or some sort of physical molestation or being attacked. You would ring the police would interview you, you would feel you'd handed it over to someone who could sort it out for you. I feel those days are gone because the police have become politicised. You know, I don't want to see policemen in rainbow-coloured paraphernalia when they're policing a demo. I don't care what their opinion is on gay people. I've got close relatives who are gay. I don't need to prove anything by wearing rainbow colours. They're quite happy in their life and they're getting on with it. They've got equal rights with property values and like a married couple would have. That's important. And they fought long and hard for this, and it's good to see it come to fruition. But this perpetual bombardment of having to accept more and more twists on the tail, and including genital mutilation almost, it gets deeper and deeper. So to me, the police should be a neutral face. You shouldn't know what that policeman's thinking or where his persuasions are or what he supports. He's there to police an incident or an event. Keep it that way. Keep your political views and opinions out of the affray. The trouble is, the police service is not what it used to be. I mean, I see coppers now who couldn't chase a criminal simply because they're obese. How did we ever get to that? How can we ever accept the fact that the people chasing the perpetrators can't catch them, can't chase them down the street? Then there was the incident at Manchester Airport where a lot of people jumped up in the air with the original footage and started condemning the police. And what we've got to look at here is one of the things we've never understood about other nations is the volatile nature of the way they express themselves. You've seen it in the Middle East at the Wailing Wall, and when anything happens to a leader or a political figure, there's thousands of people crying in public and following a coffin. We don't do that. In fact, I think the last time we saw anything like that was Diana's funeral. There was a lot of people out for the Queen, but nothing compared to Diana. Because we're not a nation who expresses ourselves or jumps the gun. We tend to wait for the news, and obviously later footage has come out where it shows that the perpetrators were violent. seriously violent. And then on top of this, you've got these idiotic feminists that are basically chastising the policewoman who had her nose broken. That's not feminism. That's liberalism gone mad. That's past its sell-by date. That is, to me, these modern day feminists do not represent real women. When I say real women, it's got nothing to do with the trans issues. It's to do with what women stand for. And the thing that always gets me with this is most women are busy keeping a job down, running the home, sorting the kids out, probably an elderly relative who needs visits and food and doing the washing. There's so many responsibilities to being just a woman that we don't need people to stand up for our rights. We've already fought for them decades ago. You know, I come from the era where I was in an office full of men and they were paid more money than me for doing the job just because they were men, not because they were doing it better. I was actually the better salesman. But I had to live through it, I had to get on with it. And now what's happening, we're getting weaker and weaker because people are expecting to be given jobs because of their background rather than the fact they can do them. It all knits in. The reason I talk about all this all together is it all knits in because it's all about weakening society. It's called the Long March. And if you can get, I mean, you've got people in universities, in colleges, in America, you can't clap because the noise of clapping upsets them. Whoa, how are they going to cope when China comes marching through? Well, that's going to upset him, isn't it? Don't make a noise with those guns, they're going to upset us. Obviously, I'm taking it to the extreme, but I think you know what I'm saying. What we've got to look at, the good news is Tommy has been released on bail. Trumped up arrest in the first place anyway. The media, of course, had a field day, couldn't wait. Couldn't wait for the news, actually. That's the sad thing about the media. They couldn't actually wait for the news. They had to put their own slant on it to deliver it to you first. And then they wonder why their figures are down. They wonder why they're not selling papers. They wonder why their online isn't as busy as it used to be because people are following other news providers. And I don't consider myself one of them. I'm just a commentator. So some of my stuff is not chronological. It's not about the here and now. It's about how we cope with this rolling boulder that's trying to mow down our lives as we live it. And if you look at Tommy Robinson, you take a leaf out of his book, you dust yourself off, you get up and you fight another day. You go and sort your allotment out, you pick your grandkids up, you buy some food, get some nice shopping in, and you get on with your life. And that's the number one fight in this, is to live normally. I am pretty isolated as a character, but that is out of choice. That's not because I'm afraid to go out. That's not because I've got so depressed this last 3 years. That's because I kind of pulled away a few years ago. But I suppose what it was with Brexit, I noticed in my social group, one or two, even people that I thought would have voted for Brexit, were not Brexiteers. And that creates a little divide, does that? Obviously, we didn't bring it up all the time. But then I worried that if you can't see this, if you can't see what it is, I don't want to spend I can't sit with you and talk about somebody's, graduation, or I want to know why you can't see what I can see. I want to talk to you about it. I want to get down to nitty gritty. And I did with a few and they changed their minds. But what we're looking at here, day to day, like with the march on Saturday, it was a success and it should have been presented as such by the media. It should have been used by the media to show that multiculturalism is actually working in some ways. If you leave us to ourselves, if you don't interfere with us, if the establishment doesn't start pushing it down our throat, we are quite capable of living side by side with each other. What we won't tolerate, what we have had enough of, is authority figures, from politicians to councillors, doing duplicitous behaviour, even to the tune of backhanders, and keeping things quiet that should be shared, and using council funding, which comes from taxes, to buy off people's silence. That's what we won't tolerate. That's the bit we kick off about. And the defending of a section of society, whatever section that is, the defending of that whole section of society, even when people who live within it are behaving abhorrently. There is no excuse. It's the equivalent of really bad parenting. It's the equivalent of the parent that goes marching off to school to defend their child before they've found out that it's their child that's the problem. That's bad parenting. Just defending your kids because they're your kids is not a strong enough argument to defend vile behaviour, including bullying, which is a lot of the content of what Tommy's video was about. Because people were defending a bully and presenting the bully as the victim. That was what it was about. And that this was backed up by authority figures. This is what we won't tolerate. Now, if you look at Saturday's march, there was a Baptist group there singing, brilliant. There were people from the Sikh community, the Hindu community, the Muslim community, the Irish. There were females, males, there were transgender. Yes, 3 transgender, because they messaged me. They're a group of friends, but they're not harmless. They're not harmful. They don't believe that kids should have hormone blockers. These are adults. These are adults that made their mind up when they were adults. And that's a different kettle of fish. Nobody wants anyone to feel uncomfortable in their own skin. They were at the march. Pensioners were at the march. Ex-servicemen at the march. So when you leave people to police themselves and get on with it, we do a pretty amazing job, really. Because let's face it, half the problem that we get wound up at, I'm speaking, if I'm not speaking for you, just say so on the thread. Half the thing that I get wound up about is when I see people, authority figures, like with the grooming gangs, making excuses for foul behaviour to defend a nucleus of people, a section of society. That's out of order. You cannot defend the bad within it to keep the good safe, because the good get tarnished with the bad. How many people were really, really naffed off about how the grooming gangs were handled in Rochdale and Oldham and different places, who were actually part of that community, who've never done anything wrong, who go to work, who were nurses in hospitals, who were working in construction, who were doing their jobs and getting tarred with the same brush because of the way authority figures handle it, because they get it wrong. Instead of working towards cohesion, they do it the other way. They think they're going to shut one side up and it'll all go away. But all that happens is you get kettled. It's like being in an abusive relationship. Usually the person being abused will tolerate it day after day after day after day, year after year, and then they'll blow. And that's what happens with human nature. So when you get authority figures, councils, the legal system, the parliamentarians defending bad behaviour or covering it up even worse to try and keep the peace, and even worse, taking the knee, bowing to what's been proven to be a political organisation that has done questionable things with its funding that it's gathered from those who believed in what they were sending the money to. So it's wrong on every level. So the good thing is that the bail conditions have been met. Tommy is out. He can fight another day. And we have to thank Elon Musk at this stage, because if it wasn't for Elon Musk taking over Twitter, videos like this, my Twitter page, Tommy Robinson, Katie Hopkins, Lawrence Fox, they wouldn't exist. They wouldn't exist. But because more and more people have started gravitating to Twitter, now it's a more open society rather than a left-wing propaganda platform. It's healthier. You feel like you can breathe. I mean, I used to get so many trolls when it was owned by the other people, and now they're minimal. I can handle them. There's not enough of them. So you need free speech. You need to be able to talk about your problems. You need to be able to address the fact that this community has got some bad people in it, as has this community. So don't cover the bad people up, because that doesn't do the good people any good at all. Because it makes you hate the whole group of people, doesn't it? because you're not getting satisfied. You're not seeing the media and authority figures. As with these various terror attacks and these various knife crimes, they never release the basic description of the perpetrator till 2 or 3 days in. When really, especially if they're on the run, shouldn't that be part of it? So we can recognise them quicker? The reason different birds have different plumage is so they can recognise each other. That's so you know the difference from a woodpecker and a blue tit. Obviously, it's difficult to know which tits we've got because they all seem to be in one place, but for different parties. So what I'm trying to say here is we're going through a new phase, I think, where this shielding of bad behaviour is growing a bit thin. It's coming to an end. Proof: Carrie Lake, a Republican, was being interviewed by Emily Maitlis, who doesn't work for the BBC now. She works for what's called News Agents, and they have a US branch and a UK one. They have a Twitter page. Lewis Goodall works for them. Lefties, really, presenting themselves as independent journalists. Well, that's how I see them anyway. And Emily Maitlis was interviewing Carrie Lake and obviously slagging Trump off, as they do. And, you know, Emily's doing what she thinks is a good journalism. I mean, they've branded the video up so they want it sharing because they don't care, don't forget. Because it gets shared by our team, call us a team, because we can see that she's just had it stuffed right up her. It doesn't matter to them because it's clickbait. It gets the channel more views, it earns them more money. So you've got to see it. I've put it on Twitter. It's from TikTok, actually. And she turns around. She says to Emily Maitlis, she thinks she wants her head examining. It's a priceless interview because Carrie Lake don't take any prisoners, does she? She's really good when she's interviewed. So that's another one where Emily Maitlis has been shown her own backside. Sometimes I have to stop my video because I can see my dog out the window and I know he's going to kick off and start barking. I mean, it's amateur enough as it is, this, isn't it? I don't want in background because actually sometimes when he's outside doing that, it sounds like a seal. You might think I'm at a water park. So I'm a pretty buoyant mood this morning because I do think we're in a different landscape now. I think it's changing all the time. Daily, you know, they say a week in politics is a long time. 24 hours seems to be a long time at the moment. Labour are already showing themselves up for the eunuchs that they are. I mean, what a shower. What a shower. They've already, we've just found them that we can't do, they've broken 3 pledges already. They haven't been in a month. This is what I mean about, why do you bother about manifestos? I see people, well, you know, what's the Reform Party manifesto? Why are you bothered? Not going to be a government, and even if they were, they'd probably cock up on a few things they've promised. Stop expecting perfection. Another thing that's been brought to the forefront is, even by Tommy, was why Nigel Farage was not at the Freedom Rally. It did have something else on, actually, but aside from that, and this is only my opinion, having dealt with him on a very not intimate basis, only to do with elections and the Reform Party. But obviously I've followed him for years and I understand his politics. I think Richard Tice did write a letter to the Home Office about Tommy Robinson's arrest, which I thought was a really good letter, actually. And from him it carries a bit more clout to the, what she called Yvette Cooper. They just go spinning round, don't they? It's like one of those rides off a fairground, you know, where you spin round and it pins you to the wall, and then when they need them, they flop back in the middle again. That's what politicians are like. Even when they lose their seat, they end up on a committee somewhere, have you noticed? You'll see them in some back cabinet office, sat there in one of them leather chairs, interviewing some other crackpot. Like, what's he called? Chris Bryant, him that had his photograph took with underpants on. Who does that? No, come on, you're a serious figure, you want to be taken seriously in politics, so you do a toilet selfie in your underpants that you haven't even had on a whitewash. What were you thinking? They don't even fit well, and you, oh snap, here's me in my underpants. Like, that's not going to get out. Hugh Edwards with his body. What are these people thinking? The last thing you'll ever see of mine is anything that I don't want to look at myself, trust me. If anybody sends you anything with me on it, bloody Photoshop, because honestly, I have to get undressed at night. I see it, whoa, no thanks, don't want that out in public. What makes these people think they're attractive? If I was Chris Bryant, I'd look in the mirror and I'd think, bit of a wimp, but I'll pass, I'll be all right in a suit. I'd know. Hugh Edwards, here's my hairy ass. I'd know. I'd think, well, what if that gets out? That's what I think. But these people don't think, do they? Because they think they're above it. But where's the common sense? I know I'm digressing, aren't I? But that's more fun in discussing that. But the thing I think about the way things are changing is because people who don't blog and don't necessarily follow me or political commentators, even they're talking about how they've had enough of it. Like the Manchester Airport thing, they've had enough of it. They've had enough of people jumping to defend, whichever way you look at it. Ask yourself, would you start attacking a copper at Manchester Airport? An armed copper? They don't go in for nothing. They don't have guns for nothing. They have guns because it's a high-risk area. And they have got more jurisdiction to police that area. Because you cannot let hotheads get hold of your weapon. Because they're hotheads. And this is what I mean about society. Any society is out of order defending the bad ones within it just because they're part of that society. That's unforgivable. Because you can cover up anything if you have that attitude. You can cover up serial killers. You can cover up anything, can't you, if you have that attitude? So what you need is transparency. You need people within a society, especially if it's a minority society, to own up to bad behaviour. To stand alongside decency. That's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be flying people in to protest about how someone's being treated when they were part of the problem. That's not on. That's wrong on a lot of levels. I've had so many messages from people who attended the march. A couple of girls that followed me from, 2016, I think. Patsy, Norma and Jean. That's Marilyn Monroe, isn't it? Patsy, Norma, Jean, Agnes, just a bit of a shout out really, who bothered to go to the march. They don't all know each other. Patsy, I think, went on her own, I'm not sure. These were women my age. These were women who were thinking, like, I'll have to change my shoes twice to get that march done. These are far right, bloody nutcases, like the media portray them to be. Most of them have been for a wash and set. One woman was 78, walked the whole length from the Courts of Justice to Trafalgar Square. Never been in trouble with the police, but brought two sons up. One's in the army. Stop trying to make out we're far right. We're not. We want everybody to exist the way that march existed. Sikhs, Hindus, anybody who believes in Britain. There's a Sikh couple. They're amazing. I can't remember his damn name. They have backed Tommy Robinson up every step of the way. They're so patriotic. It's a pity that some British people, they probably are British now, but they've got a slight accent, is fantastic. The way he puts things across and the way they stood by, the soldier that got stabbed. Have we heard much about him on the news? Or have we heard much about that? No. Did the feminists make any comments about that? That he could have been targeted because he was in the army? No feminists bothered about that, are you not? No. And that's the other thing. Are they real feminists? What is a feminist these days? This fourth wave of feminism seem like weak characters who want to be... what I've noticed, they're always from a middle class background. They've always had a good education. They're always pampered. They don't have real jobs. The bellies are full. They've never been hungry. They've never lived on a council estate. They've never known what it's like to sit with no lights on because they can't pay the bills. They've never had any of that in their life. And they sit here talking about things. And it just, with very narrow life experience. And while I think about it, this is him, Harman Singh Kapoor. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. It's really good. Talk about your heart being in it and being patriotic. Um, he's brilliant. He does so many different things. He and his wife, just to draw attention to the topic, dressed in camouflage for the day, to draw everyone's attention to the soldier that had been attacked in Kent. And there's people like that that turn up at these marches, and this is living proof that we're perfectly capable of multiculturalism ourselves. We don't need governments to ram it down our throats and have it done in a particular way, or to be multicultural you've got to forgive bad behaviour from a culture that isn't yours. That's not the way to do it. That breeds contempt. So what we really need to do, we need to handle it ourselves. People get married all the time to people from different cultures. They don't need telling to do it, do they? Most people get together because they love each other, because they want to be together. We can manage that on our own. We don't need governments. We don't need bloody politicians to tell us who to like and who, all right, Labour Party said we're to like these people. That's never going to work. What works is by seeing something in someone that you like. So, moving on, as we do, with the situation unfolding all the time with the way the country's going, the strongest fight you've got is living your life and getting on with it, doing what you want to do. I've got a joiner here at the moment putting a new gazebo thing up for me wisteria that's currently propped up with 2 washing poles at the moment. We get on with our life. I don't sit here stewing about things all the time. I research stuff a lot because it's my nature. I want to be informed. I want to be ahead of the curve. I want to know what's happening so I can make moves in my own life. And when you think of some of the, it's common sense. You don't need to wait for Labour to let you down. All you need to know is they will let you down, because whoever took over the country at this point in time is taking over a country that's skint, that's spent too much money because of idiots like Matt Hancock and idiots like Boris Johnson, who took his eye off the ball, who was on the right track with herd immunity, took his eye off the ball. He sees himself as Churchill. He's nothing like Churchill. He can sound a bit like him. He's more like an impressionist than somebody who thinks like him. Whoever took over the country, even if the Tories had got back in, they'd still be faced with the same financial deficits. Nothing would have changed. And the civil service doesn't change every time there's a government. So they're all the same people. It's just that now Labour's in charge. So if Labour want to do something, there's a chance they'll make it work better for them. Not that any Labour will come up with anything that's going to work well. Unfortunately, you've got weak people in a weak government, in a weak country. The strongest thing about this country is the people. And we are still a force to be reckoned with, because we do things on many levels. We get on with what we want to do. I seriously doubt that somebody's going to come along in the future and talk us into a lockdown for any reason. It would have to be some sort of hardcore thing, because I don't think many people will go for it. Obviously the sick, lame and lazy might do, the brigade that want that anyway, that stand to lose nothing because they're not working. I don't mean people who are disabled, I don't mean them, I don't mean people who can't work, I mean people who don't want to. It's not going to affect them, they'll be up for it. What I'm saying is we are still the strongest force in this country. It's the people of the country. So what we have to do is remember that to stay strong, we have to be strong in health, looking after ourselves, getting outside, getting fresh air, taking exercise, eating, having a glass of wine, chilling out, doing the wild thing with your boyfriend, your husband, whatever. Just live your life. Don't, so many people, I did it a bit myself, I must admit, kind of let go and thought, it's almost like there's nothing to live for. That's the feeling. So everything you've built up gets neglected. And that's how communism works. They browbeat you down till you think the only way of getting out of it is the government to give you a helping hand up. They're going to lift you out of this position that you're in. They'll never lift anybody out of any position. China's never done it, have they? And they've been at it long enough. And these other idiots we've got in charge across the West, Trudeau, and in Australia, they're clueless. The people understand more about what is needed than what the politicians do, because the politicians are living in a bubble along with the same people. The journalists, they're in this bubble. Emily Maitlis doesn't care about what's going on. I can't see that she does, because she's just getting on with flying here, flying there, reporting, that's a job, meals out in a restaurant. You know, she's quite good to a dog, actually. I don't know if she's still got it. She used to take a dog to work. Not all bad, but it's down to us to continue using, enjoying and being part of what we've built up, whatever that is. Doesn't matter what standard of living you're at, whatever you've achieved, remember, you put that there. You put it there, nobody else put it there. The government, I bet you could look round your home now, or your job, your work environment. What's surrounding you where the government made it better? Obviously, if there is something, put it on the thread.